Welcome to the Beltway broadcast, the premier podcast for the workplace learning and talent development professionals of the Association for Talent Development's Metro DC chapter. We've got some great resources in store for you today.
Hello, fellow ATDers. I'm Stephanie Hubka, and I am the 2023 Vice President of Membership and Outreach at the Metro DC chapter of ATD.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Eanes, the Vice President of Marketing and Communications.
And we also have Halyna Hodges, our Vice President of Finance and Operations, as our producer. And for this episode, we are so excited to welcome Chris Coladonato. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
We have been looking forward to this, and full disclosure, I have really been looking forward to this because we have certainly talked quite a bit about your background, your interest in today's topic. And as usual, I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we talk, before we have a great conversation, we would love it if you would introduce yourself to all of our listeners.
Well, I am a former talent development professional and hybrid workplace leader at Farmers Insurance. And I recently went into my own business as a virtual leadership consultant and realized, that wasn't quite what I wanted to do with my life. So I switched gears a little bit and went from virtual leadership consultant to I am now a nature-based wellness coach and forest bathing guide. So just a little bit different than what I used to be doing for the past 20, 30 years.
Isn't it interesting how your life will take you down paths you have never imagined?
Exactly. Not in any of my wildest dreams did I ever think I would be uttering those particular words.
And yet that is the reason why we are here today. We're going to hear from you about the topic of organizational wellness. This is probably one of those phrases that kind of gets people to, kind of perk up a little bit because it's not a phrase that we hear all the time. It may not be that it's quite mainstream enough. It may be that organizations themselves are still getting used to it, that employees are still getting used to it. But I think that's probably as good a starting point as any. Tell us a little bit about what organizational wellness means to you.
For me, and what I hear a lot about is step challenges, EAPs, the benefits that are associated with it. So, that employees can take advantage of the programs and events that we do. And that's not what organizational wellness means to me. Those are just things, and they are great things. Employee assistance programs are fantastic. But organizational wellness to me is a culture where employees are able to set boundaries of when they start and end work. And it's not a 24/7 culture where employees have the flexibility to take breaks in a way that works for them. So it's not the always on, let's just push and power through, but we're actually being really mindful and cognizant of what each person, an employee, needs in order to be their best selves. And when you do that and you have that culture where leaders are encouraging breaks, where leaders are encouraging you to come in and leave on time and not staying through, and leaders not even doing that themselves. You get the leaders who do as I say and not as I do while I power through and work until 8:00 at night. But what message is that really sending? So it's a culture where employees are able to take a step back when they need to. They're able to work out. They're able to take advantage of some of these programs that they always talk about. And they don't feel unable to, or I shouldn't be doing that, or I shouldn't be taking advantage of that. And when they can do that, they bring them their best selves to work. And then they can be more productive. They can be fresher. They can be, that much more in their everyday work when they have that time to take a step back. But it's got to be the organization that believes in that and that it's a part of the culture versus, why didn't I see you on Slack, Teams, WebEx, chat, whatever it may be? Where were you? And when it's that type of culture, nobody's going to be able to take a step back. They're going to be afraid, or they're going to find those particular things that you can buy that may or may not shake your mouse to let you know that, hey, they're still here. Really? We have to do that? But in some organizations we do. So it's that type of culture. That's what it means to me, when people can take a step back and do what they need to do to bring their best self to work.
Oh, I love that. And before we get into maybe the how-to, and I hate to use this word, like assessment or scorecard or litmus test, is there a way that folks can determine where their starting point is before they can learn to become a little bit more organizationally well?
That's a great question that I honestly hadn't thought about before. And I think it's worth a discussion. You know, I'm sure there's an assessment out there, although, maybe there isn't. But I think it's taking a look at what type of culture, whether it's a manager looking at their team or it's leaders looking at the overall organization. And a lot of times we see people looking at what programs they offer. So what I said earlier, you know, we're going to have a step challenge, and those are all very well and good, but they are not what you need on a consistent long-term basis. So maybe it's just taking a look at the culture that we have. Do people take their PTO? Do people, can we take a look at what the hours people are online? So do we have people that are working from, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. at night? What hours are people logged in? Are they logging in over the weekends? So I think you can start to look to see how long people are working. Are people able to take breaks throughout the day? Are they taking breaks throughout the day? Are they 100% logged in on Slack, Teams, whatever the tool is, 100% of the time? Those are things that you can actually look at.
Yeah.
But I think it's getting really honest.
I was also thinking like call outs.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to see, I don't know if something like a Great Place to Work might have an assessment like that.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting question that now I'm going to go down a rabbit hole later today.
Ooh.
We do love to challenge each other to think.
Yes.
So you never know what's going to come from one of these episodes. And, I think I want to ask a question about culture. And I think there's an easy way to ask that, and there's probably a more challenging way. So I think instead of asking the easier question, which is, if you are an organizational leader and you want to help to create this culture, what can you do? I think I'd actually like to start from the harder side of that. If you are an employee who is part of a culture that you're just not seeing the kind of balance or space to be able to take care of yourself, to bring wellness into your day the way we're talking about, what does it look like to begin those conversations? I'm curious if you've seen that, experienced that, or if you might have a few thoughts on where someone could start.
Yes to all of the above. So it's what started my journey, was a conversation, and it was a tough conversation, I thought. And then I realized it was actually an easy conversation. And I realized this is going to be different depending on your organization, depending on the type of person you are. So I think it's, first of all, taking a look at, is it the organization that's causing the issue, or is it me? So for me, it was me that was causing the issue. I went virtual back in 2008, 2009, before a lot of people were working from home. And I started working. I answered to people that were out in California, out in Oklahoma, so all different time zones. And I started working really long hours. My commute was gone. I would get up in the morning, have the 4-second commute, do my work and keep working. And, I'm going to answer one more email, because I no longer had I have to leave at 4 so I can beat the traffic to get home. And I was burning myself out. And I realized I got to do something. And I called my manager, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? I had to call him. We didn't have webcams. And I'm like, Steve, here's the situation. And I don't remember the exact conversation that we had, but I do remember he was a great manager for me because he
Hmm.
challenged me. He said, well, I never told you that you had to do this or work
Ooh.
that. And he's like, I'm not saying anything other than I would challenge you to look to your own habits and look to what you are doing. So that would be the first thing. So I started putting boundaries on my workday and my commute time. I took walks outside. So I think
Hmm.
that's the first thing is it the organization that is not letting you do that, or is it your own perception
Oh, that's great.
of
Yeah.
that? So I think that's the first thing. And then if
Mm.
it's truly an organization that's doing that, it is adding it to your one-on-one agenda with your people leader and saying, here's what I want to be doing. I want to come in at 8 a.m. so that I have time to take the kids to school, to take a walk for myself so I can come in fresh and ready to go. Or can we as a team decide on there's a certain time when we don't have Slack channel messages going or Teams messages going? Maybe that is during a lunch hour so that everybody can take a break. So the first thing is, really look to yourself. Is it you or is it the organization? And then just asking and talking to your people leader about what is it that we can do and what is it that I can do and the two of us can do and maybe we as a team can do. And just start small. The other thing you might do is, depending on what type of employee resource groups that you have in your organization, it also might be something that a employee resource group might be able to champion. So sometimes you have certain employee resource groups that are focused on fitness, or they may have that built in to mindfulness, or how can we bring our best selves? So that could also be another way to reach out and say, how can we do more of this in our organization?
I love that. Now, what about that employee that is working in that toxic environment? It is the organization, and they're not open to changing. I know the obvious, answer would be to find an environment that works a little bit better. But until you do that, do you have some suggestions there to protect yourself?
Yeah, and
Boundaries, maybe?
it goes back to what you just said, protect yourself.
Yeah.
What is it that you can do for yourself that allows you to protect yourself, protect your boundaries?
Yeah.
So is that something as simple as, maybe you can't tell anybody that I'm going to take a 5-minute break. I don't know where you can't say that, but that you just put away on your whatever device you have, Slack channel or whatever, and take a 5-minute break.
Yeah.
And then lunch, take it away from your desk so that you aren't pulled in. So even if you have a 30-minute lunch or a 15-minute lunch, you go away from your desk so you don't see all the messages and things that are piling in.
Yes.
So you take time. So I think it's about protecting yourself and knowing what is it that you need, whether that's I come in and I leave on my boundary times. Here are my boundaries. Here's when I'm here. Here's when I'm not. And protect those boundaries. And then what are you going to do to take a step back throughout the day so that you can be that much better? But I think you just have to figure out what it is for you to protect yourself and protect your own boundaries.
I love that. And this, I also love mindset related stuff. Like I know there's points in my career where I've thought of work as, okay, I'm just going to go earn my paycheck today.
Yeah.
Right? It's not something that I'm totally expressing myself and living my purpose. Today, I'm earning a paycheck.
Yeah. And mindset is huge.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah. And if you're walking into and you have a toxic situation and culture that you're in, again, it's here's what I'm going to do for myself. And here's why I'm doing it for myself. And yes, I'm just doing this because this is what I need to do at this time. But that doesn't mean you can't take care of yourself as well.
Yeah.
I think that's so important to keep in mind. And I think for a lot of people, it can be tricky to keep that in mind. There's An aspect, actually, I think you even mentioned this as you were introducing yourself to all of us. You had mentioned something about nature, nature bathing, as a matter of fact, I think was the term you shared. But I know one aspect of your work really focuses on bringing nature in as a component of wellness. I would love for you to talk a little bit about that. What does that look like? What could that look like, perhaps, in the course of a very busy day? What are the benefits to finding ways to kind of get outside, or maybe even bring the outside in to kind of supplement your wellness strategies?
Yeah, it's what saved me when that very first conversation that I had about, I was burning out, and I talked to my manager, and that what I started doing was taking virtual commutes and walking outdoors. And I realized, this feels really good. And I started engaging in nature in more meaningful and intentional ways. So I would go out and find trails and just sometimes walk, not even a hike, just walk and hang out and look around. And I found, wow, I feel really good when I do this. Fast forward all these years later, and I am now focusing on how I can help others make that connection. Because what nature can do for us is everything from lower our stress levels. It has been shown to lower cortisol within your body. So it can lower stress. What it can also do, though, is it can lower that cognitive load. So think about when you're on Zooms all day long and you're just going from meeting to meeting to meeting, or you have a huge project that you need to do and you're so focused on that task. Just by doing something as simple as walking outdoors and just gazing around at what you see. What it does is it takes your attention off all that stuff that you're thinking about, and it has what's called a soft fascination. So nature gives you a soft fascination where you're not really hyper-focused on anything. And what it does is it allows your brain to just take a moment to breathe. And it reduces that cognitive load. So you're not as, you're not breathing as fast anymore. So something as simple as that, taking a look at clouds. How often have you looked outside and just gazed at the clouds? You don't even have to see what they're all about. But I will tell you, I always see Falcor from Neverending Story.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's a thing. I always see Falcor.
Love that. Love that.
So looking at the clouds, you can even add a screensaver on your screen or pull up some YouTube channels of nature sounds, because even the sounds of birds chirping and water moving can also lower your cortisol levels. You might bring a plant in. So you don't always have to go outside for a hike, but something just walking outside, opening your window and just gazing outside. What do you notice? And just taking that time, that gives your body and your brain a break. And they're simple. You don't have to spend hours. I would love to have you with me on a forest bathing walk, and we'd spend an hour and a half, and I can really take you away from all of that technology. But during a busy workday, you don't have the time.
Yeah.
So 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. Your lunch, can you take your lunch outside? Maybe the weather doesn't, allow you to, or the time of year doesn't allow you to, but can you at least look outside and just gaze on what's out there?
Oh, all right. Two things. One, now I have the Never-Ending Story song in my head. Thank you.
So sorry.
As do we all. As do we all.
The Never-Ending Story. No. And the other thing is, just talking about it, just thinking about it, I am so relaxed right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you're
ready
relaxed,
for a nap. No, I'm kidding.
you're just not. You're not moving a million miles a minute, and it allows your whole nervous system to just take a breath and relax, and then it's like.
And I have to say too, so I've had the benefit of walking with you before. In fact, it wasn't too long ago, and I made a commitment to myself after that hour that we spent to find a way to do that daily. I liked how I felt when that was over. I liked the clarity. I liked the peace. I liked that my heart wasn't racing. And just before we started recording today, I went outside. I only had 5 minutes in between the wrap up of one call and, hopping over here to chat with both of you today. And I went outside and I stood on my back deck. It's a nice day on recording day. And I looked up and the sun was shining and I watched some of the clouds floating by and I saw our resident groundhog climbing down from a tree. As it turns out, groundhogs can and do climb. I watched as he very politely walked himself over to the sidewalk, and I watched as he used the sidewalk to move to his next destination, which I really, again, find to just be very respectful of our properties. And these are the things that I wouldn't have had a chance to experience, first of all, if I didn't take that break. But more importantly was the physical sensation, the benefit that came to me from doing that. I was calmer. I checked my Fitbit, as a matter of fact. I saw my heart rate had lowered.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm bringing with me. It's energy still, but it's a better energy than what I had. Yeah. And I share all of that as, really to emphasize what you've just shared. It doesn't take very long. A couple of minutes will bring you into a headspace that might just be more productive for you and, ends up being something that would, if it benefits you, it's going to benefit your team or your clients or anyone you're working with.
Exactly. It's and that's exactly it. I like to say we need to slow down in order to show up and to show up more fully for ourselves. But it has that ripple effect. Then I can be more cognizant of the conversations I'm having. I can be more intentional and I can be more present. And I'm not screaming, not like I often scream, but if I hear somebody say something, I might react and be like, no.
Right.
I have less of a tendency to do that if I've spent 5 minutes. Yeah. 5 minutes outside before my next meeting.
Yeah.
It works. I can promise you it works. I've experienced that.
It's not just magic. There's science behind it. Little magic.
There is indeed.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, before we get to our rapid fire questions, can you share maybe with the listeners, viewers, how they can learn more?
Absolutely. So there is, you can find me either out on YouTube or on Instagram. I post regularly at both of those places at The Connection Catalyst. And you can also find me on my website, and I'm blogging regularly, posting on LinkedIn as well. And the website is connectioncatalyst.com. And again, for me, it's about how can I help you bring nature in? Again, I'd love everybody to join me on a walk. I'm going to start doing some virtual walks too. But I encourage you to find what works for you. And even if it's just 5 minutes, like Stephanie was just saying, I think that's huge. But I post tips to all of those channels regularly.
Nice. All right. So we are at that point in the episode. Rapid fire.
Okay. I'm ready.
Are you ready?
I think.
Yay. Just think of walking in the woods and answer the following questions.
Love it.
So, what is one book everyone must read and why?
Oh, such a tough choice. There's so many great books.
I know.
And I have to look at it because I won't remember the actual full title. But the title is Rest: Why You Get More Done When You Work Less. And it goes back to everything that we've been talking about, that you need the space for yourself. And when you give yourself that space and you take time away, it allows you to show up more fully.
Nice. Absolutely. Okay. What is one tool you can't live without?
It's such a tough one. And I'm going to go back to our conversation from before we started recording. My big green egg. I really can't. I just... There were so many tools. I needed to hear that. So many tools. I love my big green egg. If you're not sure what it is, it's a convection oven. It's a grill. It is everything and all of that rolled into one. And I love it with all my heart. Best purchase I made years ago.
It's a life-changing
device. It is. It's an experience.
I assure you. It's, as we were saying, an art and a science.
There is an art and a science. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay. Final question. What is the best, no pressure, the best piece of advice you have ever received?
It's the piece of advice that I what's the word? I said, no. Two. And the advice was the answers are within you.
Yeah.
So often, it doesn't mean look outside, but so often we are looking for answers in so many different, the next book, the next diet, this is the time, this person's Instagram, all of that's going to solve everything for me. When in actuality, if we just get quiet and listen to our intuition and take in what we're seeing, but just get quiet and listen to what our inner selves are saying, the answer's within you.
Oh, I love it.
I do too. Almost, if you didn't have an opportunity to go for a walk while listening to today's episode, this would be a good one to listen to a second time on a walk, and then continue that walk in silence. Take time to think about that. I love the advice, Chris. I think that's such a wonderful way to wrap us up for today. But really just the entire concept, the idea that there are so many ways to find organizational wellness, and so many of them actually may involve stepping away from that screen and really getting in touch with the world around you in very unique ways. I mean, I absolutely loved getting a chance to hear and learn from you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It was honestly a true pleasure, and I'm glad I could leave all of you with the never-ending story in your brains.
That's not just going to carry us through the day. That's become a week. Thank you for bringing that to us. We're going to wake up humming that. I know I will, at least. Thank you so much. Thank you all, in fact, as part of our community, for listening and for joining us today. And of course, before you go, we have a message from our producer, Halyna Hodges.
Are you interested in partnering with our chapter? For more information, visit dcatd.org/partnerships-sponsorships.
Would you like to be even more involved in our wonderful community? Go to dcatd.org and click on Volunteer to get started.